How can I 33 meters trust everyone again after Blindside by X27F? Apologies in advance for the novella, but I am desperate for help. After being blindsided with a breakup twice by A27F, I 33M have been severely struggling over the past 9 months. I feel I've been so catastrophically betrayed that I will never truly be able to heal and trust another human being again. A and I met nearly 5 years ago through work. I hadn't dated for about a year prior to meeting A due to working on myself following another breakup. The previous partner had diagnosed BPD and caused me significant emotional distress, and so I spent most of a year reading, meditating, journaling, joined a local Coda group and started working out again, hoping to not repeat the same mistakes. I joined the business as a temp during a particularly tumultuous time for the company. I've never dated anyone that I'd worked with before, but when I met A, I was immediately taken. I can't describe how beautiful I thought she was, except to say that when I looked at her, all I saw was sunlight, and when we spoke, she filled my heart and soul with hope and joy. Once I met A, there were no other women on the planet as far as I was concerned. She had told me that she had a boyfriend, however there was an undeniable attraction between us. We spent time together at work on our breaks, conversation flowed naturally and I made clear how I felt, as did she, but I explained that I would not pursue while she was in a relationship. She had always expressed that she was deeply unhappy and that her partner was abusive, and she had to care for a child that wasn't hers while living with this partner's family. She broke up with this partner and we began dating. This relationship was truly like nothing I had ever felt, and I couldn't believe how fortunate I was to be with A after being quite unlucky in long-term relationships. This one felt like I had won the lottery, like I was king of the world. My heart sang. We seemed to be so in sync with almost everything, shared similar passions, wanted similar things and had similar plans for the future, or so it seemed. I moved in with her half-sister who lived nearby, but soon expressed that she was unhappy there and that this sister was not treating her with respect. I asked her to move in with me upon her return from visiting her family in South Africa. In retrospect, there were a lot of red flags early on that I ignored, however our relationship felt great at the time. The highs felt like the peaks of Everest and the lows seemed few and far between. I was always more extroverted than I was, however, and liked to go out. We had discussed that this was no longer something that I wanted to do multiple times a week, rather saving it for special occasions. However, I wouldn't stop her from going out and enjoying herself. Due to issues from my previous relationship, I asked only 2 things of A: that if she ever felt that she wanted to cheat on me, to just break up with me, and that when she goes out, she picks a time to come home and sticks to it. I never imposed a time for her to come home or stopped her having friends, even if they were of the opposite. Very often though, it would come back much later and much more intoxicated than she said she would. I would often have to call her to come home hours after she said she would be back. Sometimes when she did get back, she would start screaming and yelling and telling me she was worthless and that I should just beat her like her ex did, not the same ex mentioned previously. I need to clarify that not once did I get physical with her in the entirety of our relationship, and recorded these interactions for my own protection. This would also happen if she was going out with one friend in particular. LL is older than both of us, I think, mid to late 30s, and started at the business the same time as A. One day, I let slip that she would dance with other men, but then immediately said that it was just things like the Macarena. I also liked to talk, a lot. She often just chatted for an hour uninterrupted while I listened. Sometimes it was about her day, sometimes about something that had happened to her, or sometimes about nothing at all, but every time, I would listen. On an almost daily basis, however, there seemed to be something wrong. Someone had said or done something that upset her, whether it be her family, a friend or a colleague, but still, I would listen and try to help, either giving advice, a solution, or a shoulder to cry on. One of her most visited topics was her ex from South Africa and the damage he had done to her, mentally and physically. I understand that everyone has some baggage to deal with, so tried to support her with a sympathetic ear and do everything I could to be the opposite of what she told me this person was. When it was my turn to talk, A would interrupt more often than not, and where I did manage to finish a sentence, A would then hijack the conversation, barely acknowledging what I had said, and tell me about something she did that was similar or how something would impact her, etc. I always just assumed this was her way of being empathetic, but in retrospect I never really felt heard. I seemed to have a lot of trauma from her past and it would affect our interactions. I would always assume that I was cheating on her or flirting with other women. Neither of these things happened. She would get jealous if I did anything without her, e.g. one evening while she was in South Africa, I saw a movie with mutual friends. When I told her this, she began crying, She was uncomfortable with me working out and I caught her more than once snooping through my phone. I was okay with this as I have nothing to hide. I'd even given her the passcode to my phone. I felt that surely if I loved her enough, treated her with respect and supported her, she would see my virtue and stop believing I was going to hurt her. Having been treated poorly by an ex myself, I would never subject someone else to that trauma. Again though, the highs were high and I felt like all relationships take work, but every day I woke up and chose her. Our relationship continued to blossom and I still felt on top of the world every day I woke up next to a blind. I continued to feel this way until the day she finally discarded me for good. We spent lots of time together and I encouraged her to try new hobbies and supported her in her old ones. She liked to play the piano, so I made some space so she could set hers up. She liked to scrapbook, so we went to get scrapbooking bits when we could. She liked to be creative, so I encouraged her to paint. We even started painting Warhammer figures together and playing a version of it which she would write stories about. I would involve her when I was doing things like cooking, brewing or fixing my bikes. I felt like, red flags aside, this was the happiest time of my otherwise difficult life. One of my happiest memories was one year. She was unable to return to South Africa to spend Christmas with her family as she normally would due to lockdown, so I made the best Christmas I could, making a fake fireplace out of cardboard and an electric heater with stockings, getting a small Christmas tree that would fit in our room that we could decorate, lots of Baileys and Bucks Fizz and tasty food. We spent 3 days snuggled up cozily together, half drunk and watching Christmas movies. We remained at that place for around a year and a half, and then decided that we were going to share a property with a friend, as it was a gorgeous place, in a much nicer area, and splitting rent bills 3 ways would mean that we could all still save towards our future. As it was our first proper place, we had to spend a lot of money on furniture and goods such as a bed, mattress, bedding, etc. I bought these through a store card with the agreement that I would begin paying these off while sorted her finances, paying off her car and washing machine, and then she would contribute half. It is worth noting that I also had debt to pay down, but I earned marginally more so could bear it. She eventually did this, but I paid the majority of it. Throughout the relationship I always tried to split the bills 5,050, though it usually ended up 7,030. A seemed to take care of herself first, then her obligations after. After 2 years of our relationship and settled in a new place, I unexpectedly proposed to her at a Christmas event with her new work. They had arranged for everyone and their partners to go for a nice meal in a different town and spend the evening visiting the Christmas market and then clubbing. When I say unexpectedly, I mean I hadn't even planned this. I was just so happy with her in that particular moment that I dropped to one knee. She said yes. Due to the impromptu nature of this, I began saving to buy an engagement ring, and I wanted to get something really special. About 5 months later, I had saved around 3K. Eventually though, I became unhappy sharing the place with this friend as he can be quite difficult to live with, and so we all agreed that he, at least, would move out. At this time, I wanted to stay at this place as it really was a wonderful place to live. We had a garden that A and I had planted flowers in, there was plenty of light and space, we got on with the neighbors, and we'd still be able to afford it between the two of us. We'd even have the benefit of having a room to use as an office and a spare room for when either of our families came to visit. I would not have this though. She felt as if the place was tainted by the friend and we'd have to move elsewhere so she could feel settled. We viewed some places together. None that I liked, however. One that A was set on. It was close to the center of town, close to her work and close to her friends. My gut was telling me that something was not okay with this place, but I was unable to verbalize it. However, A was determined, and so I said I'd think about it. Next thing I know, she had paid the deposit and asked me to pay her back my half. Moving into this new place meant I had to spend a lot of my savings on the deposit and furnishing it, and so I was unable to purchase an engagement ring in time for our anniversary where I had intended to propose properly. I did, however, begin saving for a ring again. Due to the proximity to L in the town center, I began to start going out a lot more. As suspected, this flat was surrounded by bad neighbors. Immediately opposite us lived about 5 stoners in a flat for 2, so our flat constantly stank of. They would also come and go in the early hours of the morning, talking loudly in the hallway and slamming the door. Above us lived a Chinese couple and their teenage daughter. It felt as if they were playing bowling in clogs at all hours of the day, and for some reason, almost every night at around 2 a.m., they would start pounding something. They also cooked a lot of potent-smelling foods, so the parts of the flat that didn't stank of fish. Weekends would have their daughter coming home late, again, slamming doors. Above this family lived someone who played their TV so loudly, literally 247, that we could hear it crystal clear in our flat. 2 floors below, at all hours of the day. Now obviously ID tried to speak to all of these people, however it had little effect and complaints to the building management didn't seem to be followed up on at any point. Mornings meant we were awoken absurdly early by a symphony of seagulls cawing outside our window. This meant that since moving in, I hadn't slept for more than 3 hours a night. In addition to the noise, our landlady was continually at our front door for the first 2 months of our tenancy. The old heating system mixed with a pay-as-you-go tariff for our gas and electricity meant our bills were extortionate and there was a problem with our pipes, so our hot water was continually dark brown with bits of what I assume was rust floating around in it, which the landlady refused to address. Along with being treated poorly at my job and having to meet his needs, this led to a lot of stress for me. Regretfully, this also led to the first and only time I snapped at A. Awoken once more at about 3 a.m., I was at the end of my tether. I got out of bed, grabbed my pillow and a spare blanket and went to sleep in the bathtub, hoping it would be quiet enough for me to at least have some rest before I had to get up for work. It was not. I came out about 10 minutes later, crying, aggressive and upset that I had left her. I shouted at her that I was exhausted and needed to rest, that I was on the verge of a breakdown. I then got dressed and went out for an hour or so. When she got back I apologized and explained that I was really struggling living here and it was wrong of me to snap at her. Despite this, we tried our best to manage. I freely admit that due to the lack of sleep and stress, I became very quiet and reserved. Pretty much all I did in my free time was play video games with my headphones on to try and drown out some of the noise, and because I felt like I couldn't focus on much else. Things with us seemed okay though, and we weren't arguing or fighting. I didn't think anything was wrong. Our first argument, if you can call it that, occurred towards the end of September 23rd. We were in bed together and A was once again browsing Instagram and had been for hours at this point. I expressed I didn't shout, wasn't aggressive, used I feel statements to it that I felt distant from her as she was always on Instagram, regardless of what we were doing. The quality time we used to spend together was now mostly time where she was on her phone, but getting upset if I dared move away from her. If we were preparing dinner together, watching a show, going for a walk, whatever it was, she was also on her phone. It was not like this at the start of the relationship. She became very angry back towards me, saying that all I did was play video games and surf Reddit, how dare I, etc. I retreated at this, but when she had calmed down, I agreed that I had been spending a lot of time on the PC and on Reddit and that I would stop. We agreed that when we were together, we would put our phones down, out of the way. This lasted less than 24 hours before she was back, sucked into her phone. At this point I had deleted Steam from my PC and the Reddit app from my phone. I calmly reminded her of the argument we'd had and the solution we'd agreed to when she again became very aggressive. After this I stopped raising issues with her, because it had become such a drain on my well-being, along with the lack of sleep and stress. I couldn't handle being treated that way by someone I loved. About 2 weeks after this, I went out with Elle again. This time, it did not return until 10 a.m. the next day. I pretended to be asleep when she returned. I showered, then went out again. While she went out, I got dressed, and left for a walk to clear my head. I feared the worst but then also feared that I was just being suspicious. Surely I wouldn't have cheated on me? I messaged me around 11 a.m., saying that she was back, had just gone to the beach for a walk. I ignored my phone that day. It sent me message after message, call after call. I returned home around 4 p.m. and A was in tears, really upset that I could leave her all day and ignore her calls. I asked her plainly, did you cheat on me? She said no without even a flutter of an eyelid. My default position is trust, as I always try my hardest to not lie, so I would assume others would do the same. This mixed with years of people telling you that you're just being paranoid etc. means that I ignored my gut instinct and chose to believe her. I had no definitive proof after all. Following this, it was a very confusing time for me. In October we visited Paris together with her family. My mother came to stay for a few days, during which we visited an antique fair and I bought an engagement ring, planning on returning to the town I'd originally proposed in, and then a couple of weeks later went away overnight to a gig for one of our favorite bands. Throughout October, A had been on her phone a lot and started hiding her screen, placing the phone face down where she had not done this before, and now was on Instagram more than ever. However, she was also very doting and loving. She also started viewing everything I did as an attack against her though. For example, one evening I poured myself a drink into a glass but left hers in the bottle. She started shouting that I never did anything for her and that I was being spiteful. To be honest, I only left it in the bottle so that it didn't lose its fizz as she was busy. This hot and cold behavior continued right up until she broke up with me. Literally the night before she dumped me, she was wrapped up with me, telling me that she loved me. I returned home from work one Friday afternoon and was blindsided. A did not greet me as she normally did. I went into the living room and A was sat with a suitcase packed saying we needed to talk. I told her to come out with it and she said she wanted to talk about it. I asked, is there anything I can say to make you change your mind? And she said no, but that she wanted to talk about it. I then said to get out if that's the case, as there was no point. I remained insistent that we talk about it and I relented. I stated that she'd been unhappy for months with me and that I made her feel stupid. I couldn't understand why this was happening and explained that I never intended to hurt her or make her feel stupid. I couldn't even recall doing anything that would make her feel this way. I broke down crying. I left to move in with Elle. My memory since then has honestly been a bit of a blur. I took a week off work and spent it with my family. I was too depressed to do anything and had to sell the engagement ring. Throughout this period, A was messaging me and at times I had lost my cool, but she was acting like I'd been vile for the entire relationship. I couldn't understand any of this. I had always supported and encouraged her, never kept her from doing anything, was never violent with her and had only raised my voice once. I told A I was sorry for my mean messages, that I was sorry if she felt that I had ever done anything to hurt her, but it was never my intention, and that I would not speak for a few days, until we could meet face to face. I returned home to find that A had packed most of her stuff and moved it out, but a lot was left. I came over that evening and we had a discussion. I just let her talk to make sense of what was happening, and she explained that she felt degraded, that we were clashing a lot and that she was just doing things on her own as she felt like she couldn't get any help from me. Again, I couldn't understand this, as I always thought I had been supportive of her and we would help each other with daily tasks, i.e. I would cook, she would do the washing up. I would clean the bathroom so she would hoover, etc. I apologized that she felt that way, but that I loved her. None of this was my intention and I couldn't understand why this change had happened. Between November and New Year's Eve, A and I were dating again. She would come over multiple times a week and things started to feel good again. However, I always felt like a second choice to whatever other plans she had and would agree to something. But then she had other plans, so had to leave early. She always said these were with Elle, but now I don't know that I believe that. One evening, as A had made no indication of wanting to move back in, I neatly packed the rest of her things in boxes and put them in a spare room. While at work, I received a call from her upset that I had done this. I was confused but figured she would have to pack them either way. We made plans to spend New Year's Eve together, welcome in the new year with a new start, and hope we could start building our life together again. Over Christmas though, she sent me a text saying she was going to a party with her work colleagues. I was upset by this and stated that I thought we were spending that night together. She became really mean over text, saying that I was vile, that I never let her do anything and that I was stamping on her all the time. After this I just stopped responding. She was calling me or messaging me the entire evening, even as the clock struck midnight. We continued talking and seeing each other at the start of January. She asked to come over one evening in the week and I said no, as I was tired from work and had some bits to do. She said she was sad but okay and we'd see each other at the weekend. We continued messaging as we had been and she said she was going out with Elle one Thursday. At work the following Friday, I was having a meeting with one of the team and at the end, we started shooting the breeze as we normally do. During this, he advised that he was out last night and had seen where he was with another man. He didn't elaborate on this as I asked him not to. I messaged her asking what she had done the previous evening. She said she had a girls' night in with Elle as Elle was upset about something. I responded that a friend had seen her out. I then became vicious over text, saying she had just been out for a bit before returning back to Elle, that I was always accusing her of this or that and that I was once again stomping on her. I responded that my friend had seen her out with another man. She then became really sweet and apologetic and said that she was sorry, nothing happened and she was just lonely. Following this, I decided enough was enough and went no contact. Despite her messages and calls, I tried to harden my heart against it. I didn't speak to her for about a week but foolishly sent her a happy birthday message on her birthday. She started pleading with me again. This was Jan of this year. During this period, I was packing the flat we lived in to move out as I had exhausted all my savings and was deeply unhappy there. I needed a fresh start. One evening while packing, A came over to collect her stuff and we ended up going for dinner and talking. I was hesitant but elated on thick about how sorry she was, how nothing happened, she was just lonely, how much she missed me, etc. She promised nothing of the sort would ever happen again. Throughout all of this period though, our mutual friends and even my friends had been telling me that I was being overly paranoid or suspicious. There was probably a reasonable explanation. That we were meant to be and that I should give her another chance, despite the evidence. A would not leave me alone and genuinely seemed remorseful. I still loved her at the stage and couldn't say no. She wanted to date me again and couldn't live without me. She began to visit me at my new place and things felt like old times. We'd cook and play and watch things together. We were making plans for the future. She decorated her room at L's with photos of me. I did have plans to return to South Africa for a month to visit her family but assured me that she would call every night. Well, after a lovely last night together, I boarded the plane to South Africa. For the first week, she would call and message every day as she had promised. Then from the second week she started being quite distant, messages were infrequent and had changed in tone. By the final week, she had not responded to me at all. This was very distressing but I did not bombard her with messages. Concerned for her safety, I messaged her mother after a week asking if it was safe. She assured me she was and would be returning the next day. I woke up the next day to a text message from A. Although I have now deleted it, it is burned into my memory. Paraphrased, she said that she had not treated me well, that I had not treated her how she deserved, that I had only apologized to her once, that we wanted different things and she was moving back to South Africa. I just messaged back, okay, I hope you can heal and find happiness. I love you. What else was I meant to do at this stage? There was no point in arguing or trying to win her back. She responded, I love you. Now for almost the entire period between October and March, I was dealing with this alone. I don't have a huge network of friends and those that I do have were either fortunate enough to marry and still be in love with their first proper partners, or give advice that is basically man up. My immediate family lives abroad and so I basically raw-dogged this whole thing while everyone was telling me that there was probably an explanation and that I should give it another chance. Since then, however, I have found out some terrible things that I am really struggling with. I had been telling her friends, including some mutual friends, that the breakup was mutual and that I had been abusive and controlling throughout the relationship. I also found out that she had been seen out with other men multiple times, even prior to our breakup, and so I have the shame and embarrassment of having defended her while people at work knew what she was up to. After her final message, I hadn't contacted her at all but kept our chat in my WhatsApp archive. Unintentionally I had seen that she had updated her photo to one of her and another man in some exotic location already. It had been a month and a half. I will never claim to be perfect and accept that I probably had a part to play in the relationship ending. Having written this all out, I am also fully aware that I chose to be willfully ignorant of many red flags. After this emotional rollercoaster though, I am deeply concerned that I will never heal from this. I have completely lost my mojo as it were, and more worryingly, I am concerned that I will never trust anyone again. Ignoring all the horrific stuff that I put me through, even other people were constantly batting for her, right up until the point the truth of who she is came out. I am struggling to take people seriously. TLDR, cheated on, demonized and discarded like trash. What can I do at experience to start trusting everyone again? I have no money for therapy and dating is off the table, as frankly, after my last two partners I am terrified of women. I really would appreciate any and all help as I don't want to become a hermit. I've taken all the normal breakup advice as well. New job, quality time with friends, back at the gym, trips booked, savings saved, memories locked away, etc.